Welcome, small business owners. Today we're going to talk about the second part of taxation of bloggers, vloggers, and YouTubers. And actually, these first two demos apply to any business, any small business, when you're talking about income and we're talking about expenses. Today we're going to talk about the expense side of it. And so as we go through here, you'll see the normal disclaimers that we have, our affiliate disclaimer and our educational disclaimer. With that said, let's go ahead and get into it. So the question is, are expenses incurred when blogging, vlogging, or YouTubing, or pursuing other means of social media income deductible? If your activity is ran as a business, then expenses incurred in that business are going to be deductible. There are some exceptions to that, and we'll talk about those in just a minute. All right, let's talk about some exceptions to the rule of business expenses being deductible. Your activity has to be defined as a business. If the IRS comes in and decides that it's not a business, then nothing's deductible. They may decide that it's a hobby, and we'll talk about hobby versus business in the next video coming up. Meals and entertainment expenses, for example, are deductible 100% under certain circumstances, but for most circumstances, they're only 50% deductible, and you need to be aware of that. Auto expenses are only deductible to the extent that it's used in business. And so if you're audited on auto expenses and you don't have a log, you're gonna lose the case. So you need to keep a contemporaneous log on your auto expenses and make sure that you keep track of the business part, the non-business part, and the total miles for the year. Travel expenses on business generally would be deductible, but if you're away from home, for example, and traveling away from home, they may not be deductible. I subscribe to a site called Location Rebel, and this site, to some degree, advocates a location-independent life, and that's probably a great life. But for taxes, if you're traveling away from a base and you don't really have a base, nothing's going to be deductible. So you've got to first have a home established or a base established. Then as you travel away from that base, you can deduct some of those travel expenses. So a location-independent lifestyle just doesn't work in this type of situation. There are a couple of other exceptions as well. Large purchases may not be immediately deductible. They may need to be capitalized and then depreciated over a number of years. But in order for that, if you're a blogger or a vlogger or a YouTuber, you're probably not going to have the expenses that are just very, very large purchases. Maybe you purchase a camera for $5,000 and that camera would then be not deductible immediately, but it would be deductible over 7 years for depreciation purposes. And even then, you could take what's called a 179 deduction on and expense it immediately. So there are ways to do that. So in most cases, equipment purchased for social media type businesses will be expensed immediately, but in some cases they may not. Also, government penalties are not deductible, so if you're fined by the IRS, you can't deduct that fine if you receive penalties from the IRS. Business use of your home is not going to be entirely deductible. You've got to prove that you have a special area in the home used for business, and that's the only use that it has is for business. So let's go ahead and look at the question, can expenses in excess of revenue be deducted? That is a loss situation. And the answer is, if you truly have a business and you're acting as a business, all your expenses are going to be deductible, even in excess of income. If your activity is not defined as a business, you're not going to be able to deduct anything. So if the IRS comes in and decides that you don't have a business, you have a hobby, well, nothing is deductible. So you need to make sure that if you decide that this is a business venture, that you're acting like a business. And like I say, we will discuss business versus hobby in the next video. In short, as long as you have a business, your expenses are going to be deductible. Problem is that many social media type activities can very easily be defined as a hobby. So you've got to make sure that if you're going to call this thing a business, that you're going to make some money on it. You have a profit motive, and as I mentioned twice before, we'll talk about hobbies versus business in the next video. So stay tuned for the next video. I appreciate you watching this one, and if you like this one, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Thank you very much. Bye.